Welcome to Heart, where we break the silence, bridge the gaps, and bring real conversations about mental health to the forefront. I'm your host, Leigh Ioffe, founder and director of The Long Short Road. Welcome, Tzvi, to the show.
Thank you.
I'm really grateful to have you. I'd like to start these interviews by asking my guests to introduce themselves in their own words. So,
Okay.
take it away.
My name is Tzvi Doron. I'm 45 years old. I'm a physician by training. Um, I grew up Orthodox. I'm still Orthodox. I live on Long Island. I don't know what else your listeners want to hear.
That's a great start. Well, we're going to get into the rest. So,
Yeah.
and also just as a point, another point of entry, your wonderful wife Rachel was a guest recently on our show. And then
Okay.
after we spoke was like, you have to speak to Tzvi. So then here we are. So thank you for coming on and agreeing to be here. Um, so I want to start with your blog because I feel like, first of all, I just want to say right off the bat that everyone needs to go definitely read the piece part that you wrote on your experience with depression. So, okay, this is the question I want to start with then is you write very clearly and articulately and like what was the drive behind like the decision to be so public about your own experience? Um, and then I guess the second part of the question was what was the response that you saw from putting your story out there? And I want to get into the story too. I just want to start with
Yeah.
like the decision to put something so personal to the public in such a straightforward and articulate way. Like, what was the drive for you for that?
Yeah. I think that depression is pretty common. I'm not going to go through statistics like a physician. I want to talk to you like a person, like a human being. But it's pretty common, and especially if you count like the entire lifetime, right? Most people are not struggling with depression at any given time, but throughout their entire lifetime, it's actually quite common. And then there are related things that are not depression per se, but they are grief, just going through a hard time from something that happens, which is not the same thing as depression. And we can talk about that too, right? If you lose a loved one and you feel, totally bereft, that is not depression. That's called the normal, reaction to a loss, or if you lose your job or your house in a fire or whatever. What I've realized over time is that many people never deal with it at all. It doesn't mean that they don't get better from the worst times in their lives. They usually do because life is not static. Things change and the circumstances can get better, and time doesn't exactly heal, but it does make things less acute. So, but the problem is that the the baggage remains, and people don't ever deal with it. Sometimes this is, childhood experiences, which I have some experience with also. And I think that many people don't even know how to approach it. It's not like they're not dealing with it because they don't know how to deal with it. They don't even know how to come close to it. They don't even know how to look at it. They don't even know how to put it into words. They don't even really understand like what happened, what they're dealing with. And I happen to just naturally be good at looking these things in the eye. And I felt like it would be a good thing for me to use myself as an example to put things into very clear language so that other people could start to see their own lives through my experiences. Obviously, it's going to be different for everybody, but most people can start to say, like, I wanted them to feel whatever it is that they should feel
Yeah.
through reading what I went through and what I continue to go through. So that was the impetus behind it. The reaction, was pretty good in the sense that it did what it was supposed to do. Um, I did not get a lot of people writing to me about their own experiences, and I really don't need to because I'm not a voyeur. I don't need to hear about what other people went through. I often do in person mostly because people sometimes tell me, but I don't need it. I am not a nosy person, I'm not particularly, I just don't need to know about that kind of stuff. But people often wrote about other things. They kind of like wrote about maybe somebody they knew and how they understood that better. or things of that nature. And I wonder a little bit about whether some of the people who even wrote that really were, kind of
Writing about,
hiding the fact.
writing about
Yeah,
themselves. Yeah.
yeah, but I don't, that's fine. You know what I mean? Like, it's okay if they need to protect themselves a little bit.
Right.
The main thing is not to protect themselves from themselves. You could protect yourself from me. I don't need to know about the gory details.
Right.
But you should not shy away from the gory details yourself about yourself.
Yeah. Right. Which, and we'll get into is like, that's really the core of healing, right? Is like turning inward and looking at all those gory details. Um, One thing that, if I may just share with you my experience from reading your three-part um, series, I felt so seen as someone whose earliest memories are of being depressed or experiencing depression. I felt very seen reading your experience with that. And as I was going through all three parts and reading it, there were so many people who came to mind for me. And I was like, I have to share it with this person and this person, because they think they're the only one who's going through it. And here's proof that they're not. And the other thing I want to say about this is that I appreciated how realistic you were, especially in the third part, where like it's not over. It wasn't like you left the hospital and you were like good and done. You've had a lifetime of learning and healing since your most acute experience. And I think it just normalizes for people that this is a journey. It's something that, you know, yeah, it's a journey. But it really like that first part in the first part of the series like really struck a chord with me. So I just wanted to share that. Um, okay, do you feel comfortable going into your story a little bit and how you've gotten to where you are? And like the name of your blog is Spiritual Economics, and you really have developed, and we talked about this off camera, you've developed really a philosophy for living, um, which I really want our audience to hear about, but I wonder if you could kind of take us to how you landed there.
Yeah, sure. I grew up in a family that already had some baggage from before. My father was a Holocaust survivor. He lost his parents when he was young, and he never, frankly, really matured. He was always basically a child. Like it was almost like an adult in a like 6-year-old, mind. Not intellectually, actually. Intellectually, he had quite a few accomplishments. He got a PhD, he was a professor, he published books and things like that. But like, emotionally and otherwise, he was basically a child. He was physically abusive. My mother was depressed. I think it runs in the family. I knew her father, and he was like a just ornery. I think he was also depressed. A brilliant man. So I grew up in an interesting home, very, very high like level of learning and intellectual like just existence. Everybody had like either advanced degrees, or my grandfather didn't have that because he, grew up in Poland and like moved here, in the early part of the 20th century. But like, um, it was a massive Talmud Chacham and things like that. But the house was not a happy home. Like I said, my parents did not like each other. My dad was abusive. My mom was depressed. They fought like a lot. And then they got divorced when I was 10. My father got remarried like in 5 minutes, because he couldn't be alone, and he found somebody who would be willing to marry him. Then my mother got sick when I was 11, with uh, metastatic breast cancer, and then she was sick for the next couple of years, and she died when I was 14. Um, and those years themselves were not easy years. She was very sick the whole time, and a lot of pain, on a lot of morphine. So not always mentally with it, and just it wasn't a good situation. And then, my father was not living with us, and nobody really liked him or got along with him. So we basically said, we don't want you back. So I lived with my siblings. We were like a party of five. I had an older sister who was married already, but the other five of us were living together. And then when I was 17, my only younger brother died fairly suddenly. Not suddenly, but within like 5 days. He was well, and then he was dead. And that was the most devastating thing. I think I was already not standing on firm ground. It's not easy in general to lose a sibling, especially, I think the unnaturalness of somebody dying very young always hurts more. It even hurts strangers more, right? If you think about it, you hear about a child who dies, it hurts like even if you don't know them.
I'm literally hugging myself right now as you're sharing this because yeah, it's so painful. Wow.
Anyway, I also didn't mention that in the intervening years, while my mother was sick, my two grandparents, her parents, died exactly 1 year and 4 days apart.
Oh,
And they lived downstairs from me. So like I grew up with them and saw them literally every day of my life until they died.
wow.
So they were kind of like, it's not exactly the same as losing grandparents who don't live with you.
Right.
They were like household members. And I think that that also hurt, but I actually didn't even notice it. I mean, I noticed it, but I didn't notice how bad it was because my mother was so sick.
Mm.
So this now at 17, my brother died. That left me in a really bad place. And I was supposed to go to college, and I sort of, deferred for a year. And then I basically, at that point in time, lost all hope for the future. I just assumed that there was no future, essentially, even though I was young and ostensibly healthy, and that I would just there would not be a future. You know what I mean? I was just basically taking up space. I was stalling until I would die. There was no rationale to it. Like 17-year-olds don't die very often, but I just assumed that I wouldn't live very long. So I started college, and I was just going through the motions. I worked also while I was in college, and then everything came to a head a couple of years later. In college, I met a young woman, and we got into a very tumultuous relationship. She wasn't a bad person, just not good for me. Two unhealthy people, meeting at very vulnerable time in life. Um, and it was just something I didn't know how to deal with. And I was in therapy, I was seeing a psychiatrist, I was taking medication. I wasn't doing anything for me, by the way. So I stopped all the medication like in one day. Don't do that, by the way, if you're a listener. Even if it's not helping you, you may need to get off of it.
Disclaimer.
But yeah, do it with some help. You know what I mean? Don't just stop. You may need to stop. Like I'm not saying, but don't just stop. Get some counsel on, how to go about it and things like that. And then I totally crashed. Like at some point, I don't remember all the details that led up to it, but I basically just went into this catatonic state where I stopped eating and sleeping for maybe not that long, probably a week or two.
But even
Um,
a week or two is enough to like you don't need that much time.
yeah, well, yeah. Well,
Right.
things were bad even before that, but it was like the acute like thing that sent me to the hospital was, a couple of weeks. I think it was like 2 weeks. So then my sister took me to the psychiatrist. It's all a blur, to be honest with you. It was like I was half awake, you know what I mean? And he was like, he needs to be hospitalized. So I went, she just drove me to the hospital. I had no resistance in me, by the way. And I remember seeing a psychiatrist in the psych ER or whatever they call it, the crisis center. And I do remember this. He said to me, he said, Mr. Doron, you're sick enough that I will admit you either way.
Mm.
Um, because I'm not, I can do that. But I would like you to admit yourself because I want you to be invested in your recovery.
Wow.
And I did. I don't remember his name. It was like a Arabic name. He was a nice guy. You know what I mean? He treated me nicely. But I don't remember his name. I don't remember what he looked like. Um, and then that was sort of like rock bottom. And I can talk about the hospitalization if you want to go there. I'm fine with that too.
I mean, first, thank you for sharing everything up until now. And it's like so striking to me that he wanted you to be invested and have a sense of agency at the lowest point. And like, did that register for you? I mean, could it have registered for you at the time? You probably were just like not even really there.
I mean, it registered enough that I remember it now, 25 years later. So
Right.
probably something registered, right?
Wow. Wow. And so you were hospitalized for 2 weeks, right?
2 weeks, yeah.
And in those 2 weeks, I'm I'm wondering like what was I mean, I know this because I read the blog posts, but I'm curious for you if you could share like what would tell us about the turning point where, what the switch was like for you or yeah, what the experience was like in the hospital and then where things changed.
Yeah, the first few days also were like a blur. I don't remember much, but I do think that they put me on high doses of medication right away, like three medications, two antidepressants, and also what's it called, Ativan, which is like it's a benzodiazepine. Basically, it can be used for anxiety. It should not be used long term, in my opinion, for most people. But again, that's a different story. But they put people on it, I guess, because they needed to have a calm ward. I don't know. I'm not even saying it's the right or wrong thing to do, but anyway. And I think even just being removed from my environment maybe allowed me to rest a little bit. So I kind of like the first few days I was like an automaton. I slept and I ate and I don't remember much of it at all. And then I didn't eat much, but I showed up to meals or whatever. And then one morning I woke up and just like everything was different. I looked in the mirror. I was like, I looked like crap. My beard was grown, my hair was greasy, I hadn't showered, and the other thing that I remember was I was like hungry. I was ravenous.
Mm.
And that changed because like that was a change, I mean, because like I hadn't really cared about doing anything up until that point. So, and then everything's just like changed. I was like, oh, I don't want to look like this, which was already a little different because before that I didn't really care about anything. So I shaved and I took a shower and I guess I ate. I don't even remember. And then the main thing is that I became like awake. I was like, oh, I was looking around at people and noticing people and talking to people a little bit and stuff like that. So that was the sort of change. I was still depressed. And I'm not even sure if I was any less depressed, to be honest with you. I was just more present.
Mm.
Um, so that was the turning point. I still was in the hospital for another, I don't know how long, 10 days, maybe 9 days, something like that after that.
Wow.
Um, yeah, until discharge.
Wow. If I may, I want to read something back to you that you wrote about the
Sure.
experience of this of I think it's so um again, this is one of the parts that when I read it, I was like, I like I can think of 8 people off the top of my head right now that I know are struggling so much that this is like it's just a different perspective. When I left the hospital, I was out of the acute life-threatening situation, but I wasn't really better. I suffered from depression. Yes, I could be treated, but I had to come to terms with the truth. I would never be cured. What I needed were better skills and strategies for living a meaningful life. Most importantly, I needed to develop a whole new perspective on the world and my place in it. And that's how I've spent the last couple of decades. So, being in the hospital and having that experience didn't like stop everything for you. And the reason I mean, I think that's sometimes something that people don't grasp about their own mental health struggles or about the struggles that other people are having is like they're not just going to magically like you don't wave a wand in 2 weeks in a psych ward and come out and you're good. Like there does need to be some kind of change. So what did that look like for you?
Yeah, so first of all, I want to address it, more generally, which is, when I went into the hospital, I was acutely suicidal. I didn't talk about that before, but I was. I was already planning like how to finish my life. And when I came out, I was not anymore. So that part was better, at least temporarily. But my my feelings of, being totally down and um, just joyless and, you know, not really excited about anything, or interested much in anything was still there. I think that many people don't understand that depression is a complex problem. I'll mention an author that I have read a few of his books and I really like. His name is Arthur Brooks. He's an economist. He's written for all kinds of things, the New York Times, and um, you know, um, and he's written many books actually. I don't even know how many, but I've only read maybe three of them. So he talks about the difference between complicated and complex problems. Complicated problems have solutions. You can actually solve them completely. They may be difficult. They're complicated in the sense that it's not simple to find the answer. They have many steps. It may require a lot of expertise to solve the problem, right? These are problems like engineering problems and things like that. Complex problems are problems that don't have any ready solutions. There's no necessary end to them, right? And these are problems like tension about certain issues in your marriage, right? They're not going to go away. Some of them might, but overall, some of those tensions are related to the fact that you're two different people with different points of view, right? You're not going to fix it. It's not like one day it's like, oh, all the problems are gone.
Right,
What you can do is you can learn to understand the other person better, manage your expectations, be kinder to them, try to listen more. There's all kinds of things that you can do, but really you're just going to experience that tension for the rest of your life.
right,
And the sooner you accept it, the better. It doesn't mean that you're accepting defeat.
right,
It's kind of the opposite, actually, right? If you don't accept that this is not going to be fully solved, that's where the defeat comes from.
totally.
Because you're always like living with this expectation that like if I can just figure out the solution, I can make it go away.
Right.
And then you're constantly losing because you will lose that.
And that, interestingly, like, on the topic of mental health, seems to be the way that people kind of try to attack the problem. When people are telling me, oh, I've been doing so many things for so many years and like there's been no change, it's like, well, some of it is also that, like, are you swimming upstream against the issue? Are you trying to eradicate it rather than learn to flow with it? Which,
Yeah.
yeah. So,
Yeah. I mean, this is also like a Buddhist concept, you know what I mean, where they say that like suffering is pain plus resistance, right?
right.
Take away the resistance and maybe you still have pain, but you're not suffering as much.
I have that on my wall.
Oh,
One
really?
of the quotes I have on my wall is pain, difficulty, challenge, and stress happen. We cannot change that. We don't have to suffer, though. And then there's an equation. Pain plus resistance equals suffering.
Yeah, that's exactly what I just said. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's a Buddhist concept, I think, but it's probably found in other places too. So anyway, I think that in general, depression, especially for people who have had it, lifelong, which I have, it's not going to go away. I'm not going to cure it. The first thing to understand is that you don't have to cure it. And in fact, this may be hard for some people to hear, but you may not even want to cure it.
Mm,
You know what I mean? It's like, do you need to fix it? The first question is like, why are you even here? What do you want to accomplish in life? Because we're all going to die.
mm.
So the accomplishment is not like beating something. There is no beating anything,
Right.
right? The end of it all is the same for everyone, right? Kohelet said this, right? Hakol holech lemakom echad. Everyone goes, and everything goes to one place, which is back to the dust,
Right.
right? So if that's the end for everyone, then the question is, what are you here to do?
Mm,
And I can't exactly answer that for everyone, but the point is you have to start asking different questions. The question is not, how can I make my depression disappear? The question is, how can I live a life with meaning and some joy also anyway,
mm.
right? That's another idea, which is like, do you need to get rid of your depression to experience joy? I don't think so,
No.
because
That was the goal, then you would never experience joy.
that's
I,
right.
right?
So, yeah. So, yeah, I mean, in general, I think that, people think that like positive and negative emotions like can exist at the same time. So the idea of having positive emotions, like you can have a much better life by increasing your positive emotions without totally annihilating your negative ones, because you're not going to,
Right.
right? So I know I'm sort of attacking this question in different ways,
No,
but
that's what this podcast is for. That's why,
yeah,
no, what it's interesting because I think this is a very hard thing for many people to hear. Like I know for myself, having been through my own lifelong mental health challenges, accepting that pain is part of life was probably the most frustrating. And I went in circles to try to figure out ways to make that not be the answer for a long time. And I think I know I see a lot of people doing that too. If I could just get rid of anger, if I could just get rid of anxiety, people will reach out to our warm line. I don't understand why I'm still feeling anxious. It's like you have a nervous system. Anxiety will always be part of your lived experience. That's not the point. So this like perspective shift is, I think, very hard for people to make peace with. Yeah. I'm curious what your thoughts are on that.
No, I think it is, but the thing is that not making peace with it doesn't make it better. Right now you're dealing with two problems. Now you're dealing with the problem itself, which is the depression or the anxiety,
Right.
and you're dealing with the resistance to it, which you'll
Right.
never win. So you're like, I have a problem, which is a real problem that you have to sort of learn how to deal with. And on top of that, you're fighting a battle that you will never win.
Right.
Right. So all you're doing is adding frustration
Right.
to you're adding unnecessary pain to the necessary pain,
Right.
right? Basically, the pain, some of it you can't get rid of, so you have some pain and it's not fun. I'm not saying that we should, like I wouldn't seek it out,
Right.
but now you're adding on top of that more pain
Right.
that you can actually be rid of. The part that you can be rid of is the part that you can only be rid of by stopping to engage in denial.
Right. What has that looked like for you practically? Like creating a life of meaning and or a life with meaning and a life with joy alongside, right? Alongside depression, what has that looked like for you?
Yeah, I mean, joy is a lot harder for me than meaning. It's just the way that I am, and it's been very hard even now, 25 years later. It's not really 25 years later because I'm still part of the same story, right? The story is not over. Um, the story actually doesn't even end when we die for most of us. For me, it will because I'm childless, but for most people, it doesn't even end when they die,
Mm,
right? You know, in terms of meaning, I have decided to live a life where I ask the probing questions. Questions about like, why am I here? What do I wish to accomplish?
mm,
How do I choose to live? Instead of like, why did this happen to me? How can I get rid of this? How can I make it better? I mean, how can I make it better is a good question, but you have to understand what it means when you say that. Not like, how can I wipe away this thing that's really bothering me? Um, joy, I mean, I try as best as I can to be present for the certain things that um, are joyous, like objectively in my life. I've had a lot of things that, I've experienced that probably would be joyous for most people. For me, sometimes they are and sometimes they're not.
mm,
You know what I mean? Like since that time, I graduated medical school, I got married, you know what I mean? I've had joyous occasions. Some of them I have felt nothing from.
mm.
That's the truth. It doesn't, so like I could do this thing where I say like, what is wrong with me? Why am I not feeling joyous? But it doesn't help. Like, what does that do? Am I now joyful? No, now I'm just kicking myself. What's the point of that?
Literally, I tell people like if being nasty to yourself and beating yourself up and hating on yourself would have worked, it would have worked by now. Like when you add that, you know, and I really resonate with that experience. I feel very like validated in my own experience of like, right, there are some joyous occasions that are joyous occasions that I have not felt what I'm supposed to feel in that experience, right? Like I've been disconnected or in a very intense state of depression. So like you're not, and I think that's true for all humans, just the swimming, again, the swimming upstream of the um trying to resist it and go against it is where a lot of people get stuck. But I want to touch on something that you said before that acceptance is not giving up. Like you've resigned to just, right? Like accepting that this is how you feel is not giving up into it. Like it doesn't sound like you've given into and just said, okay, this is just who I am and I'm going to be. I'm gonna, you know,
No, in fact, I continue to try to treat it because there is a difference between understanding that I'm going to be, let's say, more melancholic than the average person versus, being in a state where it's really not very functional or, productive. Um, so I continue to do things to try to treat it. I mean, I can talk about those things too, but um, so I haven't like stopped,
right.
and um,
Well, but I
it's
think that
just,
comes from the acceptance piece, right? Of accepting that this will be a lifelong challenge for you, which is
yeah.
an important piece here for again, and the reason I'm like stressing this so much is because I'm seeing this so much from like from within the long short road community and the kind of people who are calling the warm line and the people who listen to the show that there is that feeling of like, well, if I could just solve the thing, right? And like I tell people all the time, I'm like, probably as long as I'm still having children, God willing, I will continue to be on an antidepressant. Doesn't make my job in suicide prevention any less meaningful. In fact, when I'm not on an SSRI, I can't function as a member of society. And like, that's my experience right now. That might be my experience for another 15 years. I have no idea. Right. But every time I take a pill, looking at it and being like, ugh, that's resignation. I don't think that that's the goal, but I'm seeing that in a lot of people. So that's why I'm stressing it so much.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing, I'll sort of double down on something you said before, which is like if beating yourself up would have worked, wouldn't have worked by now.
Yeah.
Let's zoom out for a minute and say like if beating oneself up would have worked for humans by now, I mean, we are many, many thousands of years and lifetimes into this experiment.
Right.
It doesn't work for anybody. It's
Right.
not just you, it doesn't
Right.
work for.
Right.
Right? So probably if it hasn't worked for like not even thousands, but like millions of human beings before you,
Right.
probably not going to work for you either.
Right. I am curious about like, yes, the practical things also that you've done to treat your depression over the last 25 years.
Yeah, much of this time I haven't done anything. I've done therapy on and off, like, not recently, but years ago. I never got much out of it, except for at one point in time in my life when I went for 10 months and I did get something out of it. Not really what I wanted, but something. For the most part, nothing of the other stuff didn't help at all. Like, many therapists, years when added up, it really did nothing for me. Um, I've used TMS a few times. It's worked, not that well and not that durably. I took ketamine for 8 years, under the guidance of a doctor, like with a prescription and everything. And that helped me a lot for a while. I think at a certain point it saved my life, and then it sort of stopped working also. Everything has stopped working for me, like literally everything, except for the things that never worked in the first place, which are your like typical antidepressants, most therapy and stuff like that. Um, what do I do? I mean, one of the things that I try to do, and I think this is real, is you have to really know how to do it, and it's hard work, but um, a lot of times, like the key is to um, you shouldn't do it too much. I have to be careful about how I say this. Turn outward and help others.
Mm,
You know what I mean? There's something about that that is healing. First of all, it makes your pain meaningful, right? You don't let it go to waste. Um, Second of all, it gives you perspective. Third of all, it is somewhat of a distraction, but I think not like an unhealthy one, like scrolling on Instagram or whatever, or drinking alcohol or using drugs or whatever. Um, I think also that if you really do it, if you're really there for other people, it doesn't only give you perspective in the sense that sometimes, the perspective that I think probably most people heard when I first said that is like, oh, you see somebody else going through something harder than you. That's not really what I was talking about. What I was talking about is something else, which is that when you really listen to somebody else, really, you begin to understand yourself better
mm,
because you can start to hear the things that you can relate to and that you cannot relate to. And it actually helps you make more sense of yourself and what you're going through. And
mm,
sometimes that can help like practically, not just as a like salve, like, oh, that person has it worse than me. I think that's kind of like a very superficial way of doing things. And also, you're not really going to be there for them.
Right.
You have to really be present for another person. And for me, it helps a lot. You know what I mean? It makes me feel like I'm doing something, like I'm here for something.
Wow. Wow. Has that been, first of all, thank you for being so open and honest about everything. And my question is, so everything has worked until it hasn't.
Mhm.
And yet you I mean that was probably really like hard and challenging when like something would work and then it would stop. So, but like there seems to be a continuous motivational drive to like keep moving forward. So, like I'm trying to like kind of take apart the what's like happening in the background there, you know? Um,
Yeah. Um, Part of it is my faith. I believe that, God created me for a reason, and he didn't create me to like off myself or live a life of nothingness.
Mm.
So that's part of it. It's probably not enough, to be honest with you. Part of it is my ego. You know what I mean? I think that I have talents to share, and like it's both a waste and also like not my right to not do that.
Mm.
Whether it's in my writing or doing a podcast like this or whatever. Um, there is, I wrote a blog post about this, right? There's a me-shaped gap in the world. There is a gap that only I can fill, and I need to fill that gap, right? And there's one that only you can fill, and you should be filling that one. I can't tell you what it is. I don't have the knowledge or the right even to, do that, but I think everyone has one. You have to find that, and that is your why. You know what I mean? That could be the things that most people think of. I'm here for my kids or whatever. Those are fine. Or it could be something else, or it could be some combination there. I can't tell you what it is. You know what I mean? Like that's each person has to go on that exploration themselves.
Yeah, right. And that's really that's I think what the inner work of healing really is going inward. A lot of times people ask me like, so what's the answer? I'm like, I don't know. It's different for me than it is for you. There's, 100 people in a room, there's 100 answers.
Yeah.
Um, one thing that you touched on your faith, and I remember we talked when we had our intro call for the podcast, you spoke a little bit about like the spiritual philosophy that you've developed that has helped you throughout life. And I wonder if you could share a little bit about that.
Yeah. My philosophy is a little bit vague. I've been sort of saying it out loud a little bit more recently because I said to myself, so what if it's vague? Like let people take it and do what they want with it. Um, I kind of feel like there is a spiritual pole of truth. It's almost like a magnetic pole that is, lined up in a certain way. And your job in life is to align yourself with it. What does that mean? Well, it might mean, you know, telling the truth, being kind to others, the obvious things. I think it's probably deeper than that. You have to sort of figure out what that is. So, for example, one of the things that I think is important, at least for me to do, is not to wait for things to come my way, right? When you're walking in the street, it's nice to notice, if you notice, somebody who needs help, whatever it is, crossing the street, an old person who's, needs whatever it may be, or somebody who's asking for money or food or whatever. That's one level, right? And then another level is to scan for that, to keep your eyes open to that, to be open to what may come. Um, Now, openness is also a little bit scary because you don't know what's going to come, right? And you have to be ready for things to come your way and for you to feel it could cause a lot of tension because you may have something that comes your way, not just in the street, but anywhere. Anybody you meet, any situation you're in where you know what the right thing to do is, but now it's really hard.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to be ready to say, um, I'm going to do it even though it's hard, or I'm not going to do it. I know it's the right thing to do, and I'm not going to do it anyway. Many people are not willing to do that. And they would rather either not be open to it in the first place, or when it comes, if it's too hard to do, they would rather make something up,
Mm,
a reason that they're not doing it instead of just saying, I should do that ideally, but I am not ready.
yeah.
I'm not even going to say I can't. Maybe you can't, maybe you can, but you're just not ready to do it in this situation. So that is a painful thing to do, and it's much easier to go through life with your blinders on. Um, so these are just examples. I think being honest, we most of this conversation has been about honesty. Can you look things in the eye? Can you describe your experience? Can you describe your experience, my experience at the lowest depths, and then, going into a mental hospital for a couple of weeks and describe it for myself and others and just tell it as it is.
Mm.
I don't have to say that it was okay or not okay, or that I should have figured out how to ward it off before I got there. Maybe it doesn't matter. The question is, can I describe what happened? Can you just say it as it is?
Right.
To me, that itself is part of life's work.
Not adding layers of into
Qualifiers,
right,
disclaimers, things like that, excuses. Maybe you have an excuse
right.
and maybe you don't. The first thing is, can you just describe what happened and just pause? Like just do that. Just like literally say things as they are and just pause for a few seconds before explaining them.
Can I speak to that for a moment?
Sure.
I run, or we run within the organization, an expressive writing program. And the goal of the writing is to say it exactly as it is without censoring yourself, without, thinking about what the audience, just write it. And without doubt, in every single group I have run, every person who will read their work out loud will start with a qualifier to the story. And it's like they can put the truth down on paper because that's the exercise, but then when they need to express it out loud, it's like, well, by the way, it came out sounding funny, or I don't really know what I was trying to say, or so it's this interesting universal experience of like we're very uncomfortable. This is like just in and of itself, that piece of being honest, like you could spend your entire lifetime just working on that.
Yeah, I mean, people are doing multiple things when they do that. They're creating space between themselves and the thing, whatever the thing is, whether it's their mental state or some experience that happened. They're already distancing themselves from it, right? Yeah, this happened to me, but I want to explain something.
Mhm.
Did it happen or not?
Right.
What, just write it. What about if I'm not even going to judge you? Imagine that for a moment, that we could just tell a story and nobody has to judge anything about it, at least for a little bit. Maybe we'll judge it later. You know what? Right? Let's allow ourselves to be human, but let's just take a little bit of space and time to just let it be, let it breathe, right? Um, but it hurts. But the problem is that if you don't do it, it doesn't actually hurt less. It just hurts less in the moment. And one of the things that I think is worthwhile for people to do is to learn how to, I mean, if you think about it, it's really empowering, right? Because it's going to hurt me anyway. At some point, somehow, it could be over a short period or a long period. It could be sort of moderately intense for, many months or years, or it could be extremely intense for much shorter than that, right? But what about if I control when and how it hurts me?
Mm,
Just think about that for a minute, right? If I could talk about it and just let it sit in the room and let it really like sit, right? It's going to hurt, but it's not necessarily going to be more total pain than if I hem and haw about it,
right.
right? In my experience, it's not.
It's true. And when people tell me, oh, but the healing work is so hard. Oh, but looking at my wounds is, I'm like, I always ask them, what's the alternative? You can keep living the way you're living. Is it working? Like, is it working for you to be in pain and also suffering? Like, it's your choice. But you're right. Either way, the pain, like we're human, so either way, the pain is there. It's kind of just like pick your version of hard. It's hard if you avoid it. It's hard if you do it. If you face it.
What I have found, honestly, is that it's really interesting. One of the reactions that I've gotten, not only to the blog, but even just sometimes in conversations, is that it's almost like sometimes I'm doing this thing and people are living vicariously through it. They would love to be able to write about what they are dealing with, but they can't do it.
Mm,
And when they read what I wrote, they they didn't really do it, but they did it a little bit just by reading it,
hmm
right? Because they can sit there, it hurts them, even though they're not living my life, but they're living their own, but they didn't have to actually do it. And I say, fine. If you can't right now, and I can do it a little bit for you, I'll never be able to do it all the way, though. People have to understand that.
right,
If I can do it a little bit for you, that's fine. I would still advise you to, figure out how to do it for yourself, but that's fine. That's one of the functions.
right. I have this like sense of curiosity of like what would happen for people if they were able to like again, we've both said this multiple times. It's not we're not eradicating the pain, right? Like when people ask me about my own experiences, they're like, "So are you better?" I'm like, "I'm functioning. I'm able to get out of bed. I don't cry for 10 hours a day. Am I better? I don't know. I don't know what that means." Right? So again, I think it's just this normalizing for people of like you're not necessarily going to fix it, but you can live alongside it and there can still be meaning certainly and presence and maybe joy alongside all of that.
Yeah. Yeah, and I have had moments of joy. I just don't have maybe as many of them as, I would like, but it is what it is.
Yeah. No. Do you have, I know it's hard to give like a one size fits all, but we'll try. Do you have a message of hope for people who are listening right now who are like really in the depths of it?
I mean, look, one thing is that things change. You know what I mean? There's often this, I've had this and I still have it often, which is like when things are bad, you feel desperate because you feel like things are always going to be that way. And it's just not reality. Life is dynamic, it changes. The way that we feel changes, sometimes because of things that are obvious and sometimes because of things that are not obvious. We don't always know why we feel one way one day and differently another day or another week or another month. So that's important. I think it's important to not everybody does this help, but for some people it helps to know that they're not alone. You mentioned when you read the piece that you felt seen, right? Even though we don't know each other, right? I think it's important for people to know that because the loneliness is like one of the worst feelings that anyone can have. And many people who are not going through something unique, they are unique people. I'm not going to say you're not unique. You are unique. We're all unique. But what you're going through is not unique. The details of it are unique, but the general, arc of it has been gone through by millions and millions of people across time and space. So, knowing that is helpful to some people, not everyone. I think, the idea of understanding that, you can have these other things living alongside whatever it is, the pain is again helps some people, not everyone. I can't give one thing that will help everyone because I really don't know everyone. You know what I mean? Like not everyone's the same. But I think these are different like elements.
But I think that the universal piece that you mentioned of everything being temporary, again, is not always helpful for people to hear. Like I know when I'm in the throes of things, it's really hard. Like in the middle of a panic attack, it's hard to remember that I'm not always going to feel that way,
Mhm.
right? But I think it's a good reminder for people who are listening now to remember that like life is dynamic and there is change and change can happen.
Yeah, and it's not just can happen, it will happen.
No.
I guarantee it. I don't know what it'll be, but I guarantee it will not be the same in a week or a month or a year as it is today.
Right. Yeah.
So,
Tzvi, thank you so much for
thank you.
coming on and sharing. We're gonna link your Substack in the show notes so everyone can check it out. And I urge everyone to read it. Um, thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Thank you for tuning in to Heart to Heart. If you or someone you love is struggling, please know there is hope and help is within reach. Since 2019, the Long Short Road has been walking alongside at-risk individuals, offering trauma-informed programs, a non-emergency hotline, and a community that fosters healing. No one has to go through this alone, and we are here for you. Discover how the Long Short Road is changing lives. Visit www.thelongshortroad.com or email us at info@thelongshortroad.com to learn more. You can be part of this mission. Sponsorship opportunities for Heart to Heart are available. Honor a loved one, support your community, and help us make mental wellness resources accessible to those who need them most. Until next time, remember, love and connection are the greatest healers. This is Leigh Ioffe reminding you, hope is here, healing is possible, and you are never alone. Together, we're walking this long, short road to a brighter future.